Hi, I'm Dennis. I want to show you coordinators and instructors who are overseeing groups of students at LindseyJones University or through that feature. I want to show you how to look into your group's performance, but also look into an individual student's performance so you can drill down and see how they're doing. So the first thing that this video assumes is that you understand how to log in and get to your coordinator dashboard. And if you don't know how to do that or this is unfamiliar to you, then you may need a more basic video and you can go back and get an overview, log in an overview video to see how this happens. But I'm going to assume that you know how to log in. You've probably done this a number of times and you probably already have some students. Now I have a university here, we have some students here, so we'll show you some good samples. First thing you can see is that on your dashboard you do have a lot of group activity that you can investigate, and I'll show you how to drill down on this in just a moment, but this just shows you the general activity level. So you can see at LindseyJones University, the section that we preside over, that we have on this day there were 4 activities, on this day there was 1 activities, way before the end of the year, and this is probably when people were preparing to take the old exam. We have bunches of activities here, so 23 on this day, and you can see how active your group is generally. You can't necessarily who is active on this screen. You have to go over to this box to see who's active. And so right now I'm looking at the most active and it has it in order. And then of course there's not a whole lot of information here, but if you hover over this certain person, it shows you that they have done 77 activities. And that's since they've been on the system. And then of course I can also say the least. And as I go least, I see that right away I have a bunch of people that aren't doing anything at all, at least not as of yet. That's important because if you've invited others external to your program, such as graduates, you can click on the least active and you can see if they're doing anything at all. Very often, if they're not, you may want to delete them from the system to terminate that relationship so that you have plenty of spots left over to put other people in. But I'll just put that to most. And I'll talk about those spots in just a little bit because they are covered down here in the licensing box as well. But let me come back over here to group performance. This is generally how you can see how the group is doing with simulations. Again, you see that the average percent passing is 20%. That means 20% of your group, when they take a simulation, is passing, or they're passing 20% of the time. Their mean information gathering for this particular group is 59%, and mean decision making is 25. Now don't be alarmed at those numbers. That doesn't mean that's how you're doing. Sometimes if a student is going in and you're not keeping track of this closely, they can exit out of things prematurely. They think they're just practicing, and of course that can hurt some of your scores. But don't take these scores too serious, but you can see the relative movement in those scores as well. This has also got a little bit of information with regard to your class's tendency to make errors of omission versus commission. And that just means, does your class have a tendency to not select enough answers? Maybe they're too cautious, enough selections, I should say, in a clinical simulation. I can see right here that my group does have a tendency, if this is over 50%, then that means the errors that they create or the points that they miss from passing has to do a lot more with making errors of omission, meaning they're not selecting enough things. They're being too cautious in the simulation. Whereas an error of commission is caused when a person actually is probably too quick to choose something, and they may rack up negative points. And so there's a little bit of group clinical simulation data that you can see. If I go to the TMC section, right now I don't have a lot of information there, so it doesn't show anything. And that's important. As your group does more TMC things, then this will start to show, but at this point that's not showing there. Okay, and now as you come over here, you see licensing. This just says my license expires in 349 days and what the date is. It also shows that I have 100 spots available and I'm using 54 of those spots, so I have 46 spots left over. If you have a class of 25 and you have 30 spots, this is going to say 5. And then you can just kind of monitor how many spots you have going on there. Here we just basically just report to you that you're in demo mode if you are, or if you're not, this will disappear if you've purchased LindseyJones University, and it just tells you what's available in the system right now. Now notice it says 40 of 90 simulations available. That doesn't mean we're holding back simulations. That means there's simulations that are not available to your account because maybe they're in revision or we're about to retire them, but we always make sure there's 30, 40, 50 simulations available for you to take. We talked about access in another area, so you can look at a video, but this is the area that you can go into and you can review. Of course, you can turn on and off simulations. So that's not really related to your group data, nor are some of these other things here. And we just talk about that in another section. But I want you to see these boxes here do show some group data. But let's suppose you want to drill down and see a little bit more information. You can look at a bigger table of information by clicking on one of these. You can see exercises done by date, by a specific exercise, or by a student. Well, let's just suppose we want to do that. We have over here, let's just say we have Billy sing. We want to go see if Billy's done anything. Actually, let's pick something that we know up here that Jeremy Rowland has done some things. So let's take a look at Jeremy Rowland if we want to drill down here. All right, so the best way to do that is we'll just go look at this stuff by students. It just gives you a big table of all of the students, and if I want to drill down, then I can just put in Jeremy right here. And I don't have to type in the whole name unless there's lots of Jeremys. And here we see over here that there's a lot of Jeremy Rowlands here. I do have a Jeremy George, so let's say I want to refine that just a little bit more. So I'll do Jeremy Rowland, and I must have misspelled that. So I'll just kind of go back. Jeremy Rowland. I think I'll just leave it at that. So let's take a look at Jeremy Rowland here. We could go in and we could look at that student and we could check out some things. Now this is just an overview of what's happened with the exercise that Jeremy Rowland has done. But I can come over here and I can look a little more closely depending on whether I want to see a ClinSim or the TMC practice exams that were done. So let's say I want to see the clinical simulation report. I can come over here. Again, I can put Jeremy up here and see what I can find. And here's a couple. Here's one that Jeremy Rowland has done. And then, of course, I can click here and I can see the simulation results. Now, these are all the simulations that Jeremy has done. In fact, it's not just these, but as you can see, I can go through a few pages of these. And then I can look at a specific date, for instance, and say, well, I want to see how Jeremy's did on the head and neck injury, and so I can come over here and I can actually just look at those results so I can see how he did specifically on that one. Looks like Jeremy passed, got acceptable levels, but you can see the details here. On this one, it also shows errors of commission and omission for Jeremy Rowland on this simulation. So I can tell from here that since this should be about 50-50, because you should make about an even amount of mistake. If it's not 50-50 and one side gets a little heavier than the other, that means the tendency is for Jeremy to pick too many things. Jeremy is a little bit overconfident and is scoring negative points, whereas if this were big, I would say Jeremy's a little too gun shy and doesn't want to pull the trigger on some of the things that he might see. And so that's what you can tell from that. Now, if I go back here, I can also, and this is kind of interesting, I could take that same simulation and I could look at the history. I can see specifically what Jeremy went through when he went through the simulation head and neck injury for 2015. I can see what the scene was, and I can see what Jeremy picked. And because this was in teaching mode, I can also see that Jeremy did this in teaching mode and whether that was correct or incorrect. Sometimes this is a good way for you to familiarize yourself with a simulation, but there's just this big long history of the trail and the pathway that Jeremy took and what he chose. So you can look into Jeremy very closely if he was having trouble, if he wasn't passing, and you can look very closely into this and maybe even provide remediation in terms of helping Jeremy do a better job. You can see what Jeremy chose. All right, now let's just go back to here. I've looked at clinical simulation report. Now let's look at the TMC exams. Let's see if Jeremy's done any of those. And so I'll just go to TMC practice exam performance report, and let's just put in Jeremy here, and we will see if there are any that Jeremy did. Now there's a Jeremy George, and that's not Jeremy Rowland. So Jeremy Rowland has not completed any of these. I will take Jeremy here just for a second and look in, peer in. I can tell he got a score of 0 out of 140, probably because he got into the test and exited. But if I went in, I could actually go see the result. And of course, he got a 0%. And I can go back and I can see question by question what Jeremy did. And if I just toggle through here with my arrows, I can see exactly the choices that he made. In this case, he skipped all the questions, so there's no data here. We might ought to use a different patient for, a different student for that, but that's how that works. Okay, so I'm just going to back up here, and I'm going to go back to my dashboard. All right, and let's just say, I wonder if this Whitney Lynch has done anything. And so we'll come up here and we'll say by student, and then we'll say I want to see a TMC exam performance report, and I want to see, let's see how Whitney is doing. I don't even know if Whitney has any records there, but we'll see. And sure enough, Whitney has done some things, and you can tell right here that Whitney was experimenting. She got 5 out of 140, meaning Whitney didn't really try. Whitney just got in there and then got out. Now here's one out of 54 out of 80 questions. So let's go take a peek at that and see. We can see that, well, on that she got 68%. And if I want to see exactly what she had trouble with, I can come down here and see the categories. I can also review the test and go question by question. I could even do this with Whitney sitting next to me. And if I go to a question that she has an X on, and I don't see any so far. Here's one that she missed this. I can discuss this with Whitney, and so I can find out what specifically are the weak areas of that particular student. Well, I hope that's helpful. I'll come back here to the dashboard, and we'll just click out of this. Go back to the dashboard. There is one other thing that I want to show you to help you understand where a student is at a very quick glance. You can, as the coordinator or instructor, you can pick any one of these students here, and I could go down the list here. I'm going to go to, let's see, we're going to go to Whitney, and she should be, if I'm not sure, I'll just actually type this in here. There's Whitney Lynch. Now watch what happens. If I click on Whitney, then I see just Whitney's login details. I can see that she's active. By the way, I can turn her off right here and make it to where she can't access that. I can also say I'm giving Whitney an expiration date on access to this. Probably would do that for graduates, but I'm going to come back. This is not what I want to do. I want to see, I'm going to just go back up here to Whitney. I'm going to hover over her instead of clicking. Now in that case, I can slide my mouse over here. I can email if I wish, but I can view Whitney's dashboard. And so if I do that, I now can see Whitney's dashboard as she sees it. And so I can see her omission tendency, her commission tendency, and her overall average score. And I wouldn't go, if you clicked on these, you could actually begin exercises. I wouldn't do that if I were you as a coordinator because it will count as the score. But you're really posing yourself as Whitney there. Anyway, I'll back right back out of there, but you can get a glimpse to see what Whitney sees. And you can provide some help in that case. Well, I hope that's been helpful, but that's just a few ways that you can drill down, look at your group's performance, but also go down, drill down and look at a specific student's performance. And I hope that's helpful, and thank you for using Lindsey Jones University.